Welcome back to the channel. Today's not necessarily a sort of construction video. We're just going to be sort of showing you some sort of aftercare, sort of tips and tricks, and then sort of how to sort of wax your board and keep it maintained and at the sort of correct speed. It's literally something you can do while you're away, or something at home with sort of help with a couple of basic sort of tools, just to keep your board going, as it should really. It's not going to be a super fast race kind of tune or anything like that. It's just literally going to be a maintenance kind of thing. So yeah, let's get started. So what we've got here is a snub. It's an old sort of demo one, been used and abused, but the base actually looks pretty okay. We've got a couple of scratches on it. So yeah, the first thing you want to do really is sort of inspect the board and see if you've got any sort of big gouges or sort of dents in the edge where it could sort of need some attention. But I mean, most of the time you shouldn't be finding stuff like that, unless you've been riding over sort of slopes that haven't got enough snow on it, or in some off-piste and trying something that's yeah, a little bit more off the snow. Yeah, first step, like I said, give it a quick look around, and then what we're going to do is sort of brush any of these sort of like dust or anything like that off the board, because you don't want that in the wax really. You want it to be nice and clean as possible. You can get sort of base cleaners and things like that. The way I always advise is that you want to have enough wax in the base to keep it sort of a long lasting speed, because the way the base works is it's basically tiny little pores, little beads of plastic almost, and when you heat it up with the waxing iron, all those pores open up, the wax goes in, and as it sort of cools, the wax is sort of trapped inside the base, almost like the pores of your skin. Like when you wash your face, you put hot water on, and then you put the soap in, and then you sort of put cold water on after to close everything up and keep it all cool. And obviously the board, it's only going to absorb as much wax as it can take, so it's not like you can put too much in. The only thing you can have is sort of wax on the surface, which you get rid of with the scraping and the brushing afterwards. So yeah, first step, once you've given it a brush down and a look around, is we're going to go over it with the waxing iron. And what we're going to do is sort of follow the base around. The main areas where the wax is going to be sort of worn off is on the edges. So obviously when you're riding your board, you're getting on the edges, you're carving, going from edge to edge, and when you're stopping, you're using the edge as well. So it's where it takes more of a beating. And obviously the main focus point is the bit between the two contact points, which are the widest parts of the snowboard, because that's obviously the main riding area. The nose and tail is only really used when you're doing buttering and things like that, or in deep snow. So yeah, first thing you want to do is sort of go around concentrating on the edge, and then we'll sort of go around the middle as well, and then just keep sort of spreading it around. Yeah, I'll sort of show you how that's done really. So the waxing iron should have a sort of temperature sort of gauge on it, and the wax you buy will be sort of supplied with a temperature that is sort of ideal for spreading. We're using a Datawax universal stuff, which is good for 120 degrees centigrade. So yeah, just slowly sort of cover as much area as you can, going around the edge and up and down the centre of the board. And then any spots that you sort of see that don't have as much wax as others, just sort of go around and make sure it's as evenly spread as you can. And then the next step is we're going to spread all that wax around. You should be able to see where there's wax and where there's not wax. The wax sort of gives it like a glossy colour, and makes the colour sort of pop a bit more, because obviously the base is dry without wax, unless you've got wax already on it and you're just giving it sort of like an extra bit of wax. But you're basically just trying to make sure it's consistent all the way around. You don't have to worry about the nose and tail as much, although it's always a good sort of habit to get it everywhere and a bit of extra practice. So again, take your time. There's no need to sort of rush it, but equally you don't want to hold the iron in the same place for too long, because you'll sort of break the wax down, and it can damage the base as well. Alright, so yeah, when it's all spread around, you need to sort of let it cool. Like I said, it acts like pores in your face. You need those pores to sort of close up and keep the wax within itself, basically. So we'll let this cool down, and while it's doing that, we'll show you some other little tips that you can do on another board, just to sort of maintain it, basically. So yeah, this is our sort of twisted. It's another sort of ex-demo board, which has been sort of used and sort of tried out, and obviously people don't always take the best care of them. You can see sometimes you get little sort of chips and scuffs on the side, and one thing that you can do to sort of help that is grab a knife and almost just sort of cut the burrs away. Obviously being careful, you don't want to go too far. Use the back of the knife to cut any of these sort of bits that are sort of hanging off, and get those off. Because obviously the more that's sort of hanging off, the more there's there to sort of claw up, and it can get worse. If you have a little bit, it can start sort of peeling up, and then obviously once the water gets underneath there as well, it can have that sort of freeze thaw effect, which sort of damages the board. And then after that, what you can do to sort of give the sidewall a sort of nicer finish and a sort of nicer look, is sort of rub some wax over the side of it. And grab some Brillo. And just sort of polish that side all up. And it's more of a sort of aesthetic thing, and a sort of preserving sort of thing as well, because it sort of protects the sidewall, and yeah, stops these little chip bits coming up even more and sort of ruining the board further. So yeah, we'll get back on with the waxing of the snub. So yeah, it's now sort of cooled down, and the wax has gone hard, but if you sort of look up and down it, you can make sure there's no sort of dry spots left. We seem to have got pretty good coverage on this one. And what you will notice is the wax is sort of textured, and obviously all of that texture is going to sort of grip the snow slightly, because it's obviously not as perfectly flat as the board was when you got it, or when it was waxed previously. So the next thing we need to do is sort of scrape off any of these sort of contours and things like that. And like I said, you don't want too much wax sitting on the surface of the base. You want the wax to be sort of absorbed into the base a bit more. So yeah, any of this sort of excess stuff, we're just gonna have to scrape off. So yeah, you get yourself a scraper, and what you're gonna do is sort of angle it, and you sort of pull it towards you, as opposed to sort of pushing up. You're just gonna sort of pull around. You don't need to put too much pressure on it, but sort of even pressure, and again, it's just sort of carving it down. It's quite therapeutic, just sort of seeing the wax curl off and how smooth it is after. So let's get scraping. So always try and stick to going one way. I've seen some people that are sort of scraping like that, and it's not going to do you any good, because you end up just going to pushing all the wax back onto it, and end up scratching the board as well. So just keep it going one way, and yeah, until it's sort of all nice and smooth. I wouldn't advise doing it in your living room. Obviously the wax is sort of going to go everywhere, so make sure you're in somewhere that's a bit more, doesn't matter if you get a little bit mucky. Same with your clothes, you don't want to wear your best clothes. So, the next step, what we want to do is get any of these sort of bits of curl, bits of dust off the board. And grab yourself a brush, but if you haven't got a brush, you can always use a Brillo pad as well. And then what the idea of this is we're just going to take it to the next level of sort of smoothness by sort of getting rid of any of the sort of scrape marks from the scraper. and any excess bits that we may have missed should sort of come off with this. And again, we're going in one direction, so yeah, again, nice firm sort of pressure. Alright, and then the only thing you've got to do now is just double check it again, move it around in the light, and sort of see if you can see any sort of dry patches, which I can't on here. And yeah, that's pretty much how to sort of wax your board. Again, it's very sort of basic wax. It will do you for doing anything like that. If you're trying to do like ski racing or snowboard racing, then I'd recommend watching a more in-depth video if you're trying to go as fast as you can. This is just for you sort of general when you're on holiday, when you're in the park, and when you're just sort of looking for a little bit of extra speed out of your board that you may not have waxed for a while or ever really. I mean, a lot of people probably don't bother waxing their boards, or they're a bit sort of intimidated by it, so they'll pay someone else to do it. But it is quite sort of simple to do yourself. You just need a couple of tools, and you're away basically. So yeah, I would always recommend maybe sort of every few years, depending on how much riding you get in, and sort of when it gets like starts to get scrapes and gouges in the base, taking it somewhere that has a base grinding machine, and getting your edges sort of refreshed. So yeah, this has been a sort of quick video. If you want to see more sort of like tips and tricks and how to look after your board, let us know. We can do some more stuff like that. And yeah, like, subscribe, comment, share, everything. Tell everyone.